listening to Not On The Payroll right here at notonthepayroll.com. You can check us out at Facebook, check us out at YouTube, check us out at Rumble. You can also check out our content over at Twitter. Got a very interesting update interview for you with a few fellas here tonight, but we're going to start with Mr. Aaron Fowler. Now, last time we talked, we were out in the heat, first of all, and we were under a canopy, and you guys were getting some petitions, getting a petition signed. You're getting some signatures. And so what seems to be the latest in y'all's endeavor with the petition?
So we do have quite a few names. We haven't gone and counted the latest number, but we're at about 200, 215.
Okay.
The other thing we were doing out there, not just getting the petition signed, is we wanted to hear from people. We wanted to know that this was an endeavor that was taken on by the whole community. We didn't want this to be just us.
Right.
So it was really hearing people out and hearing just anything they had to say, because we just wanted to make sure that everybody's being heard.
Right. Okay. All right. So tell me, I know there's. I had an interview with the mayor recently, specifically talking about this ordinance, and some of this, on the face of it, doesn't really seem to be complicated, but it seems like somehow or another complications kind of got in the mix a little bit. What's kind of where are you guys at now? Where is everything moving toward? I know at least I had heard through the rumor mill that you actually had an opportunity to sit down with the city manager.
Yes.
How did all of that go?
Me and Donnie had a great talk.
Okay.
It was probably almost 3 hours that we sat there and discussed front to back.
Okay.
It was amicable. We agreed on a lot of things. I can't say all those things got remanded in the new ordinance.
Right.
But
did you feel like it was pretty fair though?
The conversation was a fair conversation, and it was a good conversation.
Okay.
There was no
animosity, no trouble, none of that stuff.
Yeah, no bad energy.
Okay. All right. So where are you finding things now? Because I know they've released the new ordinance, or at least the new draft, from what I'm understanding.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure this will be the last one, the last draft. I believe on the 22nd they're having the vote. We appreciated Meek's time to sit down and talk to us, and he did, to his credit, make some of those changes. But with politics, as it goes, you can't always please everybody, and
sure.
I know he had other people he had to please as well.
Right.
We just don't feel like it removed enough of the restrictive language.
Okay, so where do you find the most restriction in the ordinance? Where do you find that?
Really, the only part that we really have a problem with is the chickens.
Okay.
The livestock, there is some tight constrictions on that
state regulated stuff.
Yes,
and that type of deal.
Stuff that, honestly, like if you're trying to be self-sufficient and you're on a small piece of land, you're going to do chickens, not a cow.
That's true.
So just the number of chickens.
Right.
The restriction of having roosters for the most part.
Okay.
There's some definitional issues with it, where it's talking about a lot, and then plots that are unsanctioned by the city,
right, where
both definitions can be applied to any piece of city property that somebody has a house on.
Okay, so in my most recent conversation with the city manager, he brought up the point that one of the things that they actually put in there referenced the city's effort to kind of turn this thing over to the neighborhoods, to where if your neighbors aren't at odds or having issues, then no issue. But if they are, then they can actually pursue petition against you and go to the city, and then some sort of ticket or whatever the case is will be brought to you, or whatever the case is. I don't know all the. I hadn't dug into it. I know I read through the first one, but I knew all of the hubbub was about the chickens. So really, one of the things I did see was the first line under chickens talked about 8 8 chickens per city lot. The very next sentence says, it's talking about properties that are 1 acre but below 3 are, if I'm recalling this properly, 8 chickens. So basically you have 2 representations of 8 chickens on a city lot, and then 8 below 3 acres. So
that's where the definition that I was talking about is an issue.
okay,
Because when it's talking about lots, it's talking about the sections inside of a neighborhood that were planned out. Like somebody bought this area that said we're putting 15 homes in, each one gets an eighth of an acre to
right.
half an acre. And then there's the areas that people owned land, they put a house on it, they sold the rest of it, and now there's 4 houses on 20 acres, that kind of thing. However, the difference in the verbiage can still be applied for both, and it's a reduction of how many chickens we could have compared to before I talked to him.
Okay.
So when I talked to him before, you could have 6 chickens per 8th acre and no 1/8 acre stipulation.
Okay.
Now that changed. Now you can only have 8 chickens per acre, which reduces the number of chickens you have, and I think unfairly penalizes people who have 1 to 8 or 1 to 3 acres,
Okay.
compared to somebody who has just an eighth of an acre.
Okay. So I guess my question is, in sitting down with him for 3 hours, you were able to find some level of resolve before you guys left that you were comfortable with. Am I correct with that?
Yeah.
Okay. So that resolve, and then he did he just pull up the ordinance and start chipping away at it, or how did that go down?
He was making notes
Okay.
the whole time. Like he was making diligent notes on what I was saying. Like I said, we went page to page, and I showed him our amendments that we would like to see.
Right.
And at the time, I thought we had come to a different understanding,
Okay.
or we came to an understanding, and he had to talk to somebody else, and they said, "Well, hey, because negotiations happen. I understand
Sure.
that. Like
Right.
him and me talking was a negotiation. He had to turn around and talk to city council, the mayor.
Right, right.
I understand all those negotiations, and I'm not harping on him. Like I understand, like politics, you have to try to keep everybody happy.
Sure.
But the reason that he kept them happy is, we will continue on with our course.
Yeah.
Nothing personal.
Right.
Nothing personal. It's just
chickens.
it's just chickens.
Sure.
And that's one thing I want to make clear is that we have nothing against the dogs. Like
Right.
we feel, we've all lost chickens to dogs.
Right.
I have my son playing in our property.
Right.
Loose dogs have come onto our property since we moved there.
Right,
That's
right.
an issue.
Sure.
So really, the single section that is chickens, and now it's 2 sections because they put geese, ducks, and turkeys in a separate section. So now any fowl is what
Right.
we want to address.
Okay.
'Cause-
So I guess my question is, when did you find out the new wording of the new ordinance?
They just put this out today. I went and picked it up at 3:00.
Okay, so you put it out. So they put it out today. You picked it up. So you just kind of had your first read over it,
Yeah.
and you see this reduction. Okay, so from what I understand, they're still having the final public hearing, August 22nd.
I'm not sure if it's a hearing. I believe it's just a vote.
Yeah. So according
I could be wrong.
according to Donnie, which is the city manager, he said they're still having that meeting, and then he said at that point, the next day it would go into effect.
Yeah.
Once they do the vote or whatever. I guess so. I guess the vote will be involved in that. At least that's what my understanding was.
Yeah.
But still, that meeting is going to happen on the 22nd of August, 5:30.
Yes.
Okay. So you had some issue with interview I did with the mayor.
Yeah.
Okay. What would you like to talk about with that?
Just a few points, and I just want to make it clear that I'm not singling him out to bash on him or anything. It's just inconsistencies from what we've talked about, what he said,
Okay.
and then what's actually happened.
Okay.
One of the things is an open door policy. I tried contacting him for a while. Now Meeks, I would say he does have an open door policy.
Right.
He took my phone call and was like, "Yeah, we can talk today. Come down."
Right.
He said, in his words, is that we didn't have to do a petition. Like, just come down and talk to us.
Meeks John Paul.
Yeah.
Okay.
And on the interview, that's what he says. They didn't have to go through and do a petition. But a petition is very important. It serves several important purposes.
Sure.
First, you find out who and how many people agree with you.
Okay.
If you don't have enough people come down and agree with you, what you're doing is just on you.
Right.
And then on the obverse, you get these are all the people that agree with us.
Right.
This is how many people will follow through with what we're saying.
Right.
And that's when you submit the amendments.
Okay.
And so it serves the purpose of letting them know you're serious and validating for yourself of like, okay, we're pursuing something that the community at large agrees with.
Okay, I got you.
Without that, like if you just go up there and talk to him, I mean, if just any of us went up there and talked to him about just anything, he's putting more on his plate that he doesn't need to because there might not be any backing for that.
So what you mean is with this petition, it's a show of civil force.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Okay.
To rally the group and see who's all in conjoined with.
Gotcha. So is there anything you would like to clear up?
Mostly is the dogs. Like I've heard a lot of people say that we're coming after the dogs. Like we want the dogs to say we had no, we all have kids.
Right.
The dogs are an issue.
Sure.
But things they have done have made that continued an issue. Like we have ordinances on the books.
Right.
That specifically deal with dogs.
Right.
Has not been enforced.
Right.
And I get that that's a problem of not having somewhere to put them, or not having the manpower to go out and ticket anybody, or not having anybody to ticket because a lot of people just drop their dogs off and drive away.
That's pretty much what the whole county's turned into.
Yeah.
Or at least around here.
Which is none of our fault. Like that's the city is not at fault for having somewhere that people do that.
Right.
What this this ordinance is really doing is punishing us for people dropping their dogs off.
Right.
So so the thing that being clear is that we're not against the dogs. We're not against the rabies section. There's everything is just the chickens.
Gotcha.
And that's because it comes after people's ability to be sustainable in their on their own property.
Do you believe that it would be worth a phone call or maybe another visit with the city manager specifically to talk about what this actually looks like? Because sometimes you get just kind of, I've been around some of these ordinances before, and sometimes you can get kind of trapped in the weeds of the wording. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so, because I know one of the statements that's kind of been thrown around is this is very authoritarian in nature, and
they did choose the strictest one to use as
they
a
did
template.
they did as a template,
and that's what he said in the letter. His
Right.
words were, we chose the strictest one.
Sure. And I think in that process, if you're starting somewhere, that's probably a good place to start if you have a major issue with a certain section. Because, to be honest with you, none of us have seen the police logs for how many chickens versus how many rooster calls they get a year. Or nobody's seen how many chicken and rooster calls they've had versus how many attacked duck calls they've had versus dog calls. You know what I'm saying? So some of this is it's an ordinance that is designed to address a number of things. I do find that it is it's interesting that in my conversation with the city manager, he made the statement, he said, we put this specific part in here about turning this over to the neighborhood, because if the neighborhood has no issues with it, we don't have any issues with it. And so, or at least that's what he alluded to in our last conversation. And so
the wording is in there that it's by civil disagreement.
Right.
The civil, your neighbor within 500 feet, which is 166 yards.
Right.
And anybody within that area can come to the city council and by petition. I'm not sure what they would do at that point because it's not really clear whether they would have a ticket come out or
just maybe come to you first and say, hey, listen, you got 3 roosters crowing at 4 o'clock in the morning. It doesn't specify how they would exactly go what
from
the
there.
protocol is from there.
But the issue is it's not in the neighborhood's hands because the ordinance is still there.
Right.
time goes on, people pass away, people get out of office, get out of positions. Next person comes in and says, hey, I really want to make something look strict, like I'm doing something. I'm going to hire another police officer, and we're going to go around and we're going to look.
Yeah.
And then 166 yards, that could be 9-10 houses in some neighborhoods.
Gotcha.
So, really just, it sets us up to be in a position that we have a hard time fighting that in the future.
Gotcha. Okay. So is there any last things that you want to clear up?
Really, I just, they say they want collaboration, and I'm all for that. I'm all for the ability for us, the people, to discuss our problems with the law, the figures.
Right.
But it does have to, in the end, represent us.
Right.
So when I go and talk to them, and I'd be willing to talk to them again. However, it can't take another step back.
All right. So let me ask you this: if you were going to rewrite the chicken section currently, how would you rewrite it?
I would put, for plots that are 1/8 acre that are in a small neighborhood.
Talking about a lot.
A lot, yeah.
Okay.
You can have 12 chickens, 1 rooster. Everything else above that, no restrictions. As long as you're keeping your birds healthy, safe on your property.
So you would be okay with a person who has an acre plot of land in the city having 500 chickens? I'm just asking because this is where the weeds get.
That's true. But at that point, you would run into, on the, 1015 ordinance that's already on the books, there's a section that says that you can't have a nuisance animal. Buildup of manure, buildup of waste. If you have 500 chickens, you're going to end up being in violation of the ordinance that's already on the books. So,
and you're talking about the waste. And I'm not talking about the waste. I'm talking about just 500 chickens. Let's take the waste out of it. Because say they've got a skid steer on their 1 acre, and they're handling it like a Tyson chicken farm. That's where the concern comes, because on some level, I see the point about the lot.
But you don't have to have an ordinance to enforce a neighbor's, like if a neighbor says, there's no ordinance, but a neighbor says, hey, look at what's going on over here.
Right.
They can call the police and have a civil dispute. It would go before a judge, and both sides would have to argue their point. And that's a civil dispute. And the judge would say, hey, you're in the right for having those chickens, or hey, you can't have that many chickens.
So you're saying that with the current ordinances that they have on the record, that they would use those to solve a civil dispute.
Yeah. And to be fair, it's in 1015. There's already a limit on chickens that you can have.
Right.
So the on the books, like this is already there.
Right.
So what they're doing is reducing what they had in the old ordinance.
Okay.
And making it stricter. If we just got rid of 2308 and just went back to 1015, there's stuff in there that I don't like, but hey, at least that one's already on the books.
Gotcha.
And it's not as strict.
Okay. So your ideal world would be 12 hens and a rooster per city lot, 1/8 of an acre. Anything above that, they can have as many as they want. And
that's barring civil dispute.
Okay.
Like age, noise, smell, anything like that.
Okay. Any final things that you want to throw out here?
I just encourage people to get involved. This is all of our community. We'd love to see more people come out to the city council meetings.
Okay.
Community involvement is what's going to change things.
August 22nd.
August 22nd, 5:30.
Be there.
Yep. Appreciate it.
Aaron, we appreciate your time, buddy. Thank you.